Hey there. Now we need to add the muscle groups. And if you remember from the early part of all of this, this is early on, what we really want to be working on at this stage is keeping things orderly and craftsman-like. So we have our pose. Okay, this is either my pose here or it's your pose from somewhere else. And then we've created the skeleton first. Sorry, I'm sitting here dragging my tongue around. We created the skeleton first. That was the first thing that we pose. Because then the next thing that we do is muscle groups. And then the next thing is we do insertion and origin, IO. We just make sure everything lines up and is accurate and has the same shape, or you could even say the shape is a second stage. So this just means that while I'm establishing the muscle groups, I'm not going to be, basically banging my head against a wall trying to figure out all the insertions and origins at the same time. Makes your life easier. So I'm going to do it in stages here. Recommend you do as well. So, just a couple of things I want to adjust. This should actually still be a slight arch. So I'm just pushing and pulling to make that happen. And mask by polygroups is on. That's why I'm getting this result. Okay, so we're definitely getting a bend. And compression. So yes, compressing and expanding. These guys should be literally crashing into each other. That's what I get for playing it loose. I get these little tiny loose ends that I'm just not happy with. So they'll either remain there or I'll edit them out so you don't have to deal with them. But I know most people like to see every single step. And if it's downloadable, that's even better. There, I feel a little bit better about that. So again, I'm establishing a little bit of a curve, but not much. Whereas before I was talking more about a different type of curve. It didn't really work. This is a better one. Slight curve. Very slight. Okay. So that done and said, we need muscle groups. How are we going to do all this with muscle groups? Well, let's show everything. Solo is off. And let's turn off those things that we don't want to be seen. So the body doesn't need to be seen. The base doesn't need to be seen. All we need to see are, basically, the muscles and the skeleton at this stage. We don't need the body. It's going to get in our way when we use this next step. So make sure you save the model and you're comfortable with where this is at. Just make sure you're comfortable with what it's doing. I'm going to save it over the top of that one. And then we're going to get in transpose master. And so you're going to have a lot of polygons. And transpose master is going to have some issues at this stage because it's computationally expensive what we're going to start doing. So if you have not done it already, make absolutely certain that you have decimated your skeleton. You really want to go in, be using decimation master, pre-process all, set a percentage of decimation somewhere around 2, if not just 1%, and then decimate all. Remember, naming convention is crucial. It does fail, so keep your naming convention relatively simple simple, and make sure they all have unique names. Otherwise, you're going to run into trouble. So we may very well run into trouble while we're doing this with Transpose Master, because it has similar kind of issues. So with that done and said, Z plugins, we are not using Decimation Master. Right now what we want to be using is Transpose Master. Transpose Master allows us to get in and work with multiple subtools all at the same time. So we'll work with the lowest subdivision level of all of these guys. Now there's one thing I want to work out right at the beginning, and that is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say set all of them to low. So I'm in the tool palette, subtool, all low. Okay, what that does is take all of these guys and brings them down to their lowest subdivision level. And the lower you have at this stage, the better, because we're going to be moving these guys around. So it's really recommended that you have some low res, like 3,400 is fine. You know, that those are all good numbers. The gluteus maximus is at 18,000. That seems to me like it's too much, but fair enough. This one's the one that's too much, the external oblique. So you've got a couple of choices. You know, this is it already decimated? No. I'm going to lower this subdivision level using Dynamesh. But in order to make sure I really capture the detail, I need to make sure it has a couple of layers, because our subdivision level is going to go quite low. So I need these levels to basically allow it to have, you know, higher subdivision levels, higher level of detail to capture that. And I think I got myself in a little trouble. Yeah, it's 8 million. So we'll back that off one step. All right, 2 million. So I'm going to go into Dynamesh. I will freeze those subdivision levels. Yes, I will check it. Okay. Make sure you go into Dynamesh, and that's a problem. So we freeze the subdivision levels. Let's see if we can inflate these a little bit. So I'm just inflating anywhere that they would be together. Now you've got a saved model in case anything goes wacky here. Okay, but see, that worked out all right. Not too many issues. So now how many polygons is that? 25,000. So what you might do is lower that subdivision level. So let's set it down to 80 and then recalculate. Okay, so I know I need to worry about these guys and recalculate. Clear any mask. Looks like there's poly painting that it's showing. And we're going to be at a lower subdivision level, so this is actually 10,000. Now let's unfreeze subdiv level and let it project all this information. So it's going to subdivide it 4 times. Some detail it's not catching. Clear the mask, and we're getting some crazy coloring issues here, so I'm going to just go in and assign everything with the red wax. So M, color, fill object, then I'll go back to the skin shade. So it didn't like this stuff here. And these were areas where things were just astray. So let's go back. You see how those areas are really just bad areas in our mesh? Trying to just get even topology out of that. That's fine. Alright. Unfreeze. Could be a little resculpting there, but how much trouble are we in? So that's the high res. And then we have a low res at this level, 10,000. It's going to make life so much simpler to have this. Just tons and tons simpler. So I'm going to smooth this out and see if it's not a real simple resculpt. Let me see how many undos I have. Yeah, I've got enough. And the abdomens go right over the top of that if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they do. So I'm just going to come in with clay buildup, back face masking on so I don't screw up the back. My in-bed is going to be set to 3, stroke, lazy step 0.05. Lazy step 0.05, depth, in-bed set to 4, I think is what it ended up getting set to. There we go. Hit enter a few times to lock that in. Okay, and the abs are still what people see, so that's going to be more than enough. There's some issues here on the sides. Okay. And I think we're in better shape for that. Is there anything else that's really high res? The abs are pretty high res. The lats, they're pretty high res. So they might benefit by the same type of thing, and I think they'll be a little easier to deal with. So I am going to add a couple of subdivision levels so that when it divides back up, it'll be able to find some. And keep this detail. Okay, then we're going to freeze it, which is essentially like storing a morph target. I'm going to set this down to 72 and just click Dynamesh. And we did reasonably okay. And then unfreeze. So this is if you started out in a certain way where you need to increase it, like if you had shadow box at a very high resolution or something of that nature. But you see, we didn't lose too much in terms of detail. We got a little bit that I'm really just smoothing out to fix. But now the lowest resolution, instead of being, high up like it was, is now only 5,200. Okay, so save this, because we've done a lot with changing the resolution around and going from high to low, and the operations have had to store a lot of vertice information and then transfer that back over to a different data set. So there's been a lot of operational activity. And that worries me. Okay. Done. T-pose mesh in the Z plugins. Okay. So your Z plugins, down, transpose master, T-pose mesh. It's going to take its time, it's going to do its thing, and it's going to make all these different parts and pieces all into one subtool, basically. So it creates a new subtool, or a new model I should say, a new tool, and adds all of them together at their lowest subdivision level. So there you go. It's still quite high, so everything included with this model is almost 1,000,000 polys. But it's workable. We'll see if there's anything that's really going to end up killing us. But now every subtool has its own poly group. So I can have the skeleton on, or I can have just a muscle on. And that's what we really want. We now want the ability to just have these separate parts that we're going to now be able to kind of add into each other in grouping. So I'm just going to grab the entire arm, move it, the forearm, adjust it, the leg, then the lower leg, and just really keep things simple. And I'll probably work with the limbs first, because the torso is going to require some torquing. There's some stretching and stuff like that that needs to happen. So we'll keep it simple and see how much we can get done.